Will Model United Nations survive the current coronavirus crisis? It's a question that we're starting to ask ourselves, but really only in whispers. Imagine you're a senior on the Secretariat or even the Secretary General of a conference, and this is your last chance to add to the legacy of a community that you've been a part of for 4 years or possibly even longer. Or imagine you're an organization that runs a Model UN conference and you rely on the revenue and profit that that conference generates to fund your travel team, international journal, or other projects within your organization. The prospect of canceling or postponing a conference can be a death knell to these types of organizations. The reality is, though, that conferences likely will not be taking place in fall 2020, and I don't foresee a scenario in which spring 2021 that conferences will take place. So organizations must start adjusting to the new reality and ultimately making the decision to take their conferences virtual. Organizations and secretariats that explore how to make a digital experience the best possible experience will be those that succeed. Having the conversation of what Model UN looks like in the digital world will be critical to the success not only of the conference, but of the activity as a whole. So first of all, I implore conferences to start looking at different ways in which they can run Model UN simulations and committees. Breaking people out randomly into a Zoom breakout room simply isn't an effective or great way to run an unmoderated caucus. And by trying to transpose what we used to do in the real world into the digital realm is going to do nothing but push people away from the activity. It's likely we'll see a decrease in attendance and participation in Model UN conferences. One, because the activity doesn't translate perfectly into a digital world, and two, because in-person teaching is critical traditionally to Model United Nations success. So now, as we move into a digital world, we have to ask ourselves, how are actual organizations doing the same thing? After all, the United Nations, the US Senate, and other legislative bodies are continuing to operate. What procedures have they adapted? What changes have they made? How can we incorporate them into conference designs of the future? I think one way in which Model UN will evolve is that additional projects, both before the conference and after the conference, will help to engage a different set of students. I think a different type of student is going to be attracted to a virtual-only conference. Perhaps those students less intimidated about speaking in front of a monitor as opposed to 100 people will be pulled into the activity, while those students that thrive in the chaos of an unmoderated caucus and a large General Assembly likely won't be as attractive. The key to remember, though, is that at some point we will transition back to being allowed to have more than 25 people in a room, but we don't know what the timeline is. So conferences have two choices at this point. One, postpone, cancel, and defer your conference and hope that you'll be able to restart that engine when things begin to go back to normal. Or two, make the transition and take the necessary steps now to ensure that your digital or virtual conference is going to be the best possible experience. If you're running a conference, what do you think? How will this transition into the digital world affect your conference experience? What do you think conferences need to do to be successful? Would you even attend a virtual Model UN conference? Email me at frank@allamericanmun.com or subscribe to my personal newsletter, the Gavel Drop, to be involved in these conversations every week and get emailed every Monday morning with a new topic of conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you're staying well.